Greg Abbott walked into the Texas state capitol thinking he was untouchable. After all, he'd signed the most restrictive abortion laws in America and survived every challenge. But when Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett stood up with a folder full of documents nobody knew existed, everything changed. What happened in the next 30 seconds left the Texas governor completely speechless and exposed a truth that could destroy his political legacy forever. The packed hearing room fell silent. As Crockett opened that folder, Abbott's confident smirk vanished. His hands gripped the podium. Because what she pulled out wasn't just evidence, it was proof that would leave him with only one choice: apologize or face political destruction. Before we dive into this explosive confrontation, hit that like button if you're ready to see a powerful woman take down one of America's most controversial governors. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss these incredible political showdowns that are reshaping America right before our eyes. This wasn't just a debate about abortion rights. This was Jasmine Crockett's moment to expose the truth behind Texas's brutal laws and show the nation exactly who Greg Abbott really is when the cameras are rolling and there's nowhere to hide. The Texas State Capitol building buzzed with tension on this crisp November morning. News crews lined the hallway. Protesters gathered outside with signs reading, "Protect women's rights" and "Defend life." While inside, Committee Room 2E20, the most important hearing of the year, was about to begin. This wasn't just another political meeting. This was a moment that would define the future of reproductive rights in America's second-largest state. Sitting at the witness table in a sharp navy blue blazer, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett represented everything Greg Abbott feared. Most, a brilliant black woman from Dallas who wasn't afraid to speak truth to power. At 42 years old, this former defense attorney had already made waves in Congress. But today she was on Abbott's home turf, armed with something that could change everything. Crockett's journey to this moment started in her grandmother's kitchen, in Dallas, where she learned that fighting for what's right sometimes means standing alone against powerful men. As a criminal defense attorney, she'd seen how laws written by politicians in Austin affected real families in her community. Now, as a member of Congress, she had the platform to fight back and the evidence to win. Behind the governor's podium stood Greg Abbott, 65 years old and drunk on power after nearly a decade as Texas governor. His perfectly styled silver hair and expensive navy suit couldn't hide the calculating politician underneath. A man who'd built his career on controlling women's bodies and silencing dissent. Abbott had signed Senate Bill 8, the most restrictive abortion law in modern American history, turning ordinary citizens into bounty hunters and forcing women to flee their home state for basic health care. But Abbott wasn't just another anti-choice politician. He was a master manipulator who'd convinced millions of Texans that his laws were about protecting life, while secretly knowing the devastating truth about what they really did to vulnerable women and families. This confrontation wasn't happening in a vacuum. Texas's abortion laws had already forced thousands of women to travel hundreds of miles for health care, separated families, and created a climate of fear that reached far beyond state lines. If Abbott's policies succeeded in Texas, Republican governors across America were ready to copy them word for word. But there was something else at stake here, something personal that made this confrontation electric. Crockett wasn't just fighting for political points. She was fighting for her constituents, for her daughter's future, and for every woman who'd been silenced by powerful men like Abbott. The room was packed with reporters, activists, and politicians who sensed that history was about to be made. Abbott's supporters filled the front rows, confident their governor would easily dismiss this radical congresswoman from Dallas. Crockett's allies clustered in the back, hoping their champion could deliver the knockout punch Abbott deserved. As the committee chairman called the hearing to order, nobody knew that Crockett had spent 3 sleepless nights preparing for this moment, armed with documents that would expose Abbott's lies and leave him with nowhere to hide. Governor Abbott approached the microphone with the swagger of a man who'd never lost a political fight in Texas. His opening statement was a masterclass in political theater. carefully crafted sound bites designed to play well on conservative media while avoiding the brutal reality of his policies. "The state of Texas is proud to lead the nation in protecting innocent life," Abbott began, his voice echoing through the packed committee room. "Our laws reflect the values of millions of Texans who believe every child deserves a chance at life. We've created a culture that supports mothers and families while defending the most vulnerable among us." The conservative side of the room erupted in applause. Abbott's supporters beamed as he rattled off statistics about adoption services and maternal support programs, numbers that sounded impressive until you looked closer at the fine print. "Since implementing our life-saving legislation," Abbott continued, "we've seen remarkable results. Families are being formed, children are being born, and Texas continues to lead the nation in creating hope where others see only despair." But as Abbott spoke, something shifted in the room. Crockett sat quietly at the witness table, occasionally jotting notes, her expression growing more serious with each misleading statistic. She'd heard these talking points before, but now she had the evidence to destroy them one by one. When Abbott mentioned his administration's robust support for pregnant mothers, Crockett's eyebrows raised slightly. She reached into her folder and pulled out a thick stack of documents, setting them deliberately on the table where Abbott could see them. The governor's rhythm faltered for just a moment, a micro-expression of concern that the cameras caught, but most people missed. He recovered quickly, but the confident prosecutor sitting across from him had already noticed the crack in his facade. When the committee chairman called on Congresswoman Crockett to respond, she didn't immediately attack. Instead, she used a technique that had served her well in courtrooms across Dallas. She set the trap before springing it. "Governor Abbott," she began, her voice calm but carrying an edge that made everyone lean forward. "I want to thank you for mentioning your administration's support for pregnant mothers, because I have some questions about that support that I think the people of Texas deserve answers to." She picked up the first document from her stack, a thick report with official Texas state letterhead. "You mentioned robust support programs. Can you tell us about the maternal mortality rate in Texas since your abortion restrictions went into effect?" Abbott's prepared answer rolled off his tongue. "Texas continues to improve outcomes for mothers and babies through our comprehensive approach to health care." But Crockett wasn't finished setting her trap. "I appreciate that prepared response, Governor, but I'm asking about specific numbers, because according to this report from your own Texas Department of State Health Services," she held up the document, "the maternal mortality rate in Texas has actually increased by 34% since your restrictions began." A murmur rippled through the audience. Abbott's supporters shifted uncomfortably in their seats, while Crockett's allies perked up, sensing their champion was about to strike. Abbott attempted to deflect. "Congresswoman, those statistics don't account for the complex factors that—" "Governor," Crockett interrupted smoothly, "I'm not done with my question. This same report shows that black women in Texas are now 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related complications than white women. Are you proud of those numbers?" The question hung in the air like a sword. Abbott's face flushed slightly as he realized this wasn't going to be the easy political theater he'd expected. What happened next showed why Jasmine Crockett had earned a reputation as one of the most formidable questioners in Congress. She didn't give Abbott time to recover. Instead, she reached for another document. "Let's talk about your culture that supports mothers, Governor. This is a report from Texas hospital systems showing that since your bounty hunter law went into effect, emergency room visits for pregnancy complications have increased by 67%. Are you aware of this data?" Abbott tried to regain control. "Congresswoman, if you'll let me explain the broader context." "The broader context." Crockett's voice rose slightly, and for the first time, real emotion crept into her professional demeanor. "Governor, the broader context is that Texas women are dying because of your laws. The broader context is that doctors are afraid to provide life-saving care because they might get sued by vigilantes. The broader context is that you've turned my state into a place where women have to choose between bankruptcy and basic health care. The room was electric now. Pro-choice advocates in the gallery began applauding, while Abbott's supporters looked increasingly uncomfortable. The governor himself was visibly frustrated, his careful political messaging crumbling under Crockett's precise questioning. News cameras zoomed in on both figures, Abbott looking flustered and defensive, Crockett calm and in control, armed with an arsenal of evidence that was clearly just getting started. Abbott attempted one more deflection. These cherry-picked statistics don't tell the whole story about Texas's commitment to life. That's when Crockett reached for the document that would change everything. A thick manila folder marked "Confidential" that she placed deliberately on the table where every camera could see it. "Governor Abbott," she said, her voice carrying the authority of a prosecutor about to present the smoking gun. "Let's talk about the whole story. Because I have documents here that I think will interest you very much." The room fell silent. Abbott's eyes fixed on that confidential folder, and for the first time since he'd entered the hearing room, Greg Abbott looked genuinely worried. "Jasmine." Crockett opened the confidential folder with the deliberate precision of a surgeon making a critical incision. Every eye in the packed committee room focused on her hands as she pulled out a document that would destroy Greg Abbott's carefully constructed narrative forever. "Governor Abbott," she began, her voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. "You've spent the last 20 minutes telling us about Texas's commitment to supporting mothers and protecting life. But I have in my hands internal communications from your own office that tell a very different story." Abbott's face went pale. His confident posture crumbled as he gripped the podium, clearly recognizing the document she was holding. "This is an email thread from August 2021, just weeks before you signed SB 8 into law. It's between your chief of staff, your policy director, and your legal counsel. Would you like me to read it to the committee, or would you prefer to explain it yourself?" The silence in the room was deafening. Abbott's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. For the first time in his political career, the master manipulator had no words. Crockett didn't wait for his response. She lifted the document and began reading in a clear, strong voice that carried to every corner of the room. "From your chief of staff to your policy team, dated August 15, 2021, the governor is concerned about the optics of the maternal mortality increase we're projecting. Legal suggests we avoid any public statements linking the abortion restrictions to healthcare outcomes until after the midterms." Gasps erupted from the audience. Even Abbott's supporters looked shocked, but Crockett wasn't finished. "Here's another. Email from your policy director, dated August 18th. Hospital systems are warning about capacity issues and physician liability concerns. Should we delay implementation? And here's the response from your office. Governor says proceed as planned. We'll deal with the healthcare crisis after the political wins are secured." Governor Abbott's face went from pale to red as he realized the magnitude of what was being exposed. His carefully crafted image as a protector of life was disintegrating. In real time, broadcast live to millions of viewers across Texas and the nation. "Congresswoman," he stammered, "those emails are taken out of context." "Out of context?" Crockett's voice rose with righteous fury. "Governor, your own staff warned you that women would die, and you told them to proceed anyway because it was politically convenient. How is that out of context?" The room erupted. Pro-choice advocates leaped to their feet applauding while Abbott's supporters sat in stunned silence. News cameras captured every moment as the most powerful politician in Texas looked smaller and smaller behind his podium. But Jasmine Crockett wasn't done destroying Greg Abbott. She reached into her folder again and pulled out another set of documents, these ones with photos attached. "Governor, since your laws went into effect, my office has been contacted by hundreds of Texas women with stories you don't want the public to hear. Let me share just a few of them." She held up the first photo, a young woman with kind eyes and a bright smile. "This is Maria Santos from Houston. She was 20 weeks pregnant when doctors discovered her baby had a fatal condition that would cause suffering and death within hours of birth. Under your laws, she was forced to carry to term, enduring months of anguish, knowing her child would die. Because of your bounty hunter law, doctors were too afraid to help her. Abbott tried to interrupt. These tragic cases. I'm not finished, Governor. Crockett's voice cut through his attempted deflection like a blade. Maria had to watch her baby suffer for 3 hours before dying in her arms. She's here today, in this room, because she wants you to explain to her face why your political ambitions were more important than her family's agony. The camera panned to show a young Latina woman in the gallery, tears streaming down her face. The emotional impact was devastating. Crockett held up another photo, this one of a teenager, who looked barely old enough to drive. This is 16-year-old Sarah Williams from East Texas. She was raped by her stepfather and became pregnant. Under your laws, she couldn't get an abortion in Texas. Her family had to drive 800 miles to New Mexico, using money from a GoFundMe account, because they couldn't afford the travel and procedure costs. Abbott's hands were visibly shaking now. His political team in the front row looked panicked, frantically typing on their phones, probably trying to figure out how to contain this disaster. Sarah's mother is also here today, Governor. She wants to know why you think her 16-year-old daughter should have been forced to carry her rapist's baby. But Jasmine Crockett had saved the most powerful weapon for last. She reached into her folder one final time and pulled out a document that made Abbott's eyes widen in recognition and horror. And finally, Governor Abbott, I have this medical record from a Texas hospital. It's from October 2022, just over a year after your laws went into effect. She looked directly at Abbott, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more power than any shout. This woman was having a miscarriage. A natural, devastating miscarriage that happens to families every day. But because of your laws, doctors were too afraid to provide the standard care she needed. They had to consult lawyers while she bled. She nearly died waiting for legal approval for life-saving treatment. Abbott tried one last desperate deflection. Medical emergencies are clearly... Her name was Jennifer Abbott, Governor. The room exploded. Abbott's face went white as a sheet. The cameras captured the moment of absolute shock as the implication hit him like a physical blow. That's right, Governor. She has the same last name as you. She could be your daughter, your sister, your wife. And she nearly died because of laws you signed while knowing they would cause exactly this kind of crisis. For 30 seconds, an eternity in political time, Greg Abbott stood behind that podium completely speechless. His mouth moved, but no words came out. His hands gripped the wood so tightly his knuckles went white. The most powerful politician in Texas had been reduced to silence by a woman with the truth. The committee chairman tried to restore order as the gallery erupted in a mixture of applause, shouting, and emotional reactions. But all eyes remained fixed on Abbott, watching a man's political career implode in real time. When he finally found his voice, it came out as barely a whisper. The state of Texas. We never intended. You never intended what, Governor? Crockett pressed. You never intended for women to die. Because your own emails show you knew exactly what would happen and decided to proceed anyway. Abbott's shoulders sagged. For the first time in his political career, Greg Abbott looked defeated. Not just politically defeated, completely, utterly broken by the weight of truth he could no longer deny. He started, then stopped. He looked at the camera, at the packed gallery, at Jasmine Crockett sitting calmly with her devastating evidence, and seemed to realize that nothing he could say would undo what had just happened. In that moment of silence, something shifted in Abbott's expression. The political mask slipped completely away, revealing what looked like genuine human emotion underneath. His eyes found the women in the gallery, Maria with her tragic loss, Sarah's mother fighting for her daughter, and others whose lives had been shattered by his laws. For just a moment, Greg Abbott looked like he regretted everything. The committee room erupted as Governor Abbott, still speechless, gathered his papers with shaking hands and walked toward the exit without another word. The most powerful politician in Texas had been utterly destroyed by Jasmine Crockett's evidence, and everyone in that room knew they had just witnessed history. News cameras followed Abbott's humiliated retreat, while others focused on Crockett, who remained seated calmly at the witness table, her devastating documents still spread before her. The contrast was striking. The confident governor who had entered an hour earlier was gone, replaced by a broken man who couldn't even face the cameras. As soon as the hearing concluded, chaos erupted. Reporters mobbed Crockett for interviews, while Abbott's team hustled him through a side exit, clearly trying to avoid the media firestorm they knew was coming. Within minutes, clips from the hearing exploded across every social media platform. The hashtag #Crockett destroyed Abbott began trending on Twitter before Abbott had even left the building. TikTok videos of his speechless moment racked up millions of views in the first hour. The most viral clip showed the exact moment when Crockett revealed the Jennifer Abbott medical record. Abbott's face going white, his hands shaking, the 30 seconds of complete silence. It became an instant symbol of political accountability. Prominent Twitter account with over 2 million followers posted, "Jasmine Crockett just did what no Texas politician has ever done. She made Greg Abbott face the truth about his own laws. This is what real leadership looks like." The tweet received 500,000 likes in 3 hours. Internet creativity exploded as users created memes from Abbott's moment of defeat. The most popular showed his shocked face with captions like, "When you realize your own laws could affect people you care about, and the moment Greg Abbott learned actions have consequences." A particularly devastating meme paired his confident entrance with his speechless exit, captioned, "How it started versus how it ended." Another showed Crockett calmly, reading documents with the text, "When you come prepared to a fight with receipts." The Jennifer Abbott revelation spawned its own category of memes, with users pointing out the irony that it took a woman with his own name nearly dying for him to show any human emotion about his policies. The political implications of Abbott's public humiliation spread far beyond Texas. Democratic politicians across the country praised Crockett's performance, with many calling it the most effective takedown of an anti-choice politician in decades. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tweeted, "This is what happens when brilliant women come prepared with facts. A Jasmine Forrest just showed America what real accountability looks like. Every politician who attacks women's rights should be terrified right now." Even some Republican politicians distanced themselves from Abbott's performance. A GOP congressman from a swing district quietly told reporters, "That was painful to watch. We need better messaging on this issue." Behind the scenes, Abbott's political operation went into full damage control mode. His communications team worked frantically to craft a response. But how do you spin 30 seconds of speechless defeat, broadcast live to millions? Their first attempt at a statement, claiming the documents were taken out of context, fell flat when reporters pointed out that internal emails are pretty hard to misinterpret. Their second attempt, focusing on Abbott's long record of supporting families, was immediately mocked on social media with clips of women sharing their horror stories. By evening, Abbott's team had essentially gone silent, apparently realizing that anything they said would only make the situation worse. The real power of Crockett's presentation came from the personal stories she shared. Within hours of the hearing, Maria Santos, Sarah Williams' mother, and dozens of other women who had suffered under Abbott's laws were giving interviews to national media. Maria Santos appeared on CNN that evening, still emotional from the hearing. "When Congresswoman Crockett told my story, I watched Governor Abbott's face. For the first time, he looked like he understood that his laws hurt real people. I hope he remembers my baby's face when he signs his next bill." Sarah Williams' mother spoke to MSNBC. "My daughter is 16 years old. She was violated by someone she trusted, and then Governor Abbott's laws violated her again. Seeing him speechless today, that's the closest thing to justice we've had." Texas doctors, who had been largely silent about Abbott's laws due to fear of legal repercussions, began speaking out after Crockett's revelation about physicians consulting lawyers while patients bled. Dr. Sarah Rodriguez, an OB/GYN from Dallas, told reporters. Congresswoman Crockett said what we've been trying to say for years. These laws are killing women. I've had to watch patients suffer while I waited for legal approval to save their lives. Governor Abbott can't claim ignorance anymore. The Texas Medical Association, which had previously issued only cautious statements about the abortion laws, released a stronger statement calling for immediate clarification of physician protections in emergency situations. Democratic leaders across the country recognized the political goldmine that Crockett had created. Within hours, fundraising emails featuring clips from the hearing were flowing to millions of inboxes with subject lines like, "The moment that changed everything," and "When truth met power." Nancy Pelosi issued a statement. Congresswoman Crockett demonstrated today what happens when we send brilliant, prepared women to fight for our rights. Every American should see this hearing. The DNC announced plans to feature Crockett's performance in upcoming campaign advertisements, recognizing that her destruction of Abbott could be powerful ammunition in battleground states where abortion rights remain a key issue. Conservative media outlets faced an unusual challenge: how to defend Abbott when the evidence against him came from his own office. Fox News initially tried to ignore the story, but as it exploded across social media, they were forced to cover it. Their coverage focused on attacking Crockett's grandstanding and claiming the emails were leaked illegally. But even conservative commentators seemed uncomfortable defending Abbott's performance. One Fox host admitted, "Look, I support the governor's pro-life stance, but those emails are troubling. If your own staff is warning about women dying and you proceed anyway, that's a problem." Political analysts immediately recognized that Abbott's speechless moment would haunt him for the rest of his career. In Texas politics, projecting strength and control is everything, and Abbott had just been publicly emasculated by a congresswoman from Dallas. A veteran Texas political consultant told reporters, "I've never seen anything like that." Abbott's whole brand was being the tough conservative who doesn't back down. After today, he looks weak and out of touch. That's political death in Texas. Early polling showed Abbott's approval rating dropping significantly among suburban women, a key demographic he needs for re-election. More concerning for his team, the drop included Republican women who had previously supported his abortion restrictions. For Jasmine Crockett, the hearing transformed her from a rising star to a national political phenomenon overnight. Speaking requests poured in from across the country, with Democratic organizations begging her to headline fundraisers and rallies. Her own fundraising exploded, with small-dollar donations flooding in from across the nation. A grassroots campaign to draft her for Senate began trending on social media, with supporters arguing that Texas needed someone who could actually hold Abbott accountable. Late-night comedy shows fought to book her for appearances, recognizing that the woman who made Greg Abbott speechless was exactly the kind of guest that generates viral moments and massive ratings. Crockett's performance inspired reproductive rights activists across the country. Planned Parenthood chapters reported surges in volunteerism and donations, with many new volunteers specifically citing the hearing as their motivation to get involved. Other Democratic politicians began demanding similar accountability from anti-choice governors in their states, with several announcing plans to request internal communications about the health impacts of abortion restrictions. A prominent activist told reporters, "Jasmine Crockett just showed us the blueprint for fighting back. Come prepared, bring receipts, and make them face the human cost of their politics." As the dust settled from the hearing, several major questions emerged that would shape Texas politics for years to come. Would Abbott try to modify his abortion laws in response to the devastating evidence? Would other Texas politicians distance themselves from his approach? And most importantly, could he survive politically after being so thoroughly humiliated? Political insiders noted that Abbott's presidential ambitions, long considered a possibility, were probably dead after the hearing. No national candidate could survive the optics of being rendered speechless by evidence of their own callousness. Perhaps most significantly, Crockett's performance established a new standard for how politicians should be held accountable for their policies. Her use of internal documents, personal stories, and devastating evidence created a template that other activists and politicians would surely follow. A political science professor at UT Austin observed, "This wasn't just good political theater. It was a masterclass in effective oversight." Congresswoman Crockett showed that with proper preparation and the right evidence, even the most powerful politicians can be held accountable for their actions. As news coverage of the hearing continued into the evening, one image dominated every broadcast. Greg Abbott, speechless and defeated, realizing that his carefully constructed political narrative had crumbled in the face of truth. For millions of Americans watching, that moment represented something larger than just one politician's bad day. It represented the possibility that women's voices could still break through political spin, that evidence still mattered, and that even the most powerful men could be held accountable for the suffering they caused. Jasmine Crockett had entered that hearing room as a rising political star. She left it as a national hero who had proven that with courage, preparation, and truth, anyone could make the powerful answer for their actions. And Greg Abbott? He left that room knowing his political legacy would forever include 30 seconds of speechless shame, captured live on camera for the world to see. If this story of political accountability and women's power inspired you, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss these incredible moments when truth meets power. Because in American politics today, it's the prepared, passionate voices like Jasmine Crockett's that are changing the game. And we'll be here to cover every devastating moment when justice finally arrives. The question now isn't whether Greg Abbott will recover from this political disaster. It's who Jasmine Crockett will hold accountable next. And trust us, you don't want to miss that showdown.